There are days, still, I have 3 books out now, and there are days that I get up and go to work and go to work, which means write. And it's just, I get in a funk and I think, you know what, I can't do this anymore. But what I learned from that is that just means I need that day off, basically.
Right.
I take a break, I don't worry about it, I take a little time, and then the next day, no problem, I'm fired up and ready to go again.
And we're live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Innerneath. We're talking today with Ben Meeks, who is an author, all-around good guy who I met last year. We met last year in Vegas. I think that's what it was.
Yep.
Yeah, we met last year in Vegas, and Ben's got some interesting stories to talk about. First, well, what I'm interested in, because when we were in Vegas, we had this I don't gamble. And you
okay.
you and I forgot the guy we were with. There was a guy, he had a lot of money. And we were at the craps table, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea what I'm doing. So he's like putting all his money down, and I'm like rolling. And then I'm rolling. And then before I know it, these people are starting to gather around the table. There's these college guys next to me, like, yeah, bro, keep going, bro, because they're betting on my rolls or whatever. So it was like a half hour or whatever. I was rolling, no idea what I was doing. And then finally crapped out. And I was like, nah, I'll take my winnings and just go. I'm not going to play anymore. Right. How much longer did you play that? Oh, can you tell us
how much longer? I didn't play the craps at all. I was out of that one. I lost money on the slots earlier, and that was it. That was it for me. So,
yeah,
I set myself a limit, and it was a very small limit, and I lost all that money, and I was happy to do so, and then I moved on. So yeah.
Responsible adulting. I love it. I also love the fact that we have the term adulting now.
Right.
These are things that these are things I ponder about sometimes. But so tell us about what is up with your authorship. You are not, I wouldn't say, well, fairly new, because I remember reading your blog, and guys, you can always check out Ben's websites, and down in the description box below there are links down there. And this kind of process of you being a part of this group, and then you not thinking you were going to be an author, and then becoming an author. So how did that whole process happen?
How I became an author. Okay. So I always wanted to be an author. I was always interested in writing. And as far back as, middle school, I tried writing stories, and they never worked. Class assignments, no problem, did really well with them, but writing on my own didn't work. And so the takeaway I got from it was that I wasn't a good writer. And if I'm not good at writing, why try? You know what I mean? So I quit. And I quit for a long time, up until 2013. And it always stayed in the back of my head. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, that would be really cool, but that's not my thing. Whatever, So Dragon Con comes along. 2013 is the first year I went to it. And I'm flipping through the panels, looking for stuff to do, and I see the writer's track. And I thought, hey, a writer's track. I'll go listen to some authors talk. That would be cool.
Right.
So I pick a panel, I go sit down, and about 15 minutes into this panel, I had this epiphany moment, and I don't remember what the panel was, some random thing. Epiphany moment that I could do this, that it wasn't that I wasn't a good writer, it's that I didn't know how to write. So from that Dragon Con, I spent the next 3 years learning everything I could about writing, practicing a little bit, you know what I mean, but mostly just learning. At the end of that 3 years, I started writing my first book. And by the way, I didn't say I'm going to give myself 3 years and then I'm going to write. I learned until I ran out of material. It just happened to take 3 years for me to run out of stuff to learn. And then I started writing, and it took me another 2 years to write that book and get it published. And then later I had to go back and fix a bunch of stuff I messed up and put it out again. But, that's how it goes. So yeah, that's kind of where I started with it. It's kind of an unusual path, I think, but it kind of worked out.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of paths. I don't know if there to be a conventional path because every time I hear a writer's story, it's always, it's never. Very rarely is it straight there unless they were an academic or something.
Right.
Usually it's some meandering path around doing something else first and then coming back to it. Do you think that because a lot of people have issues with sticking with stuff? This is something I've always been big on. Is like I deal with. I've dealt with a variety of people in my lifetime, as most people at our age have. And I think back on some of the people who, they said they couldn't do something. So they never try to do it. Or if they try to do it, they did it for like 5 seconds. And the second it was uncomfortable, there's that knee jerk, I can't do this. And they never, ever go back to it. And I do find sometimes when I tried, it was just hard to explain. You can't really explain it, but it's like you have to keep going because the failures are a part of you learning. No one ever gets to any goal, period. I don't care if you're working out or studying or want to be a writer or want to be a musician, whatever, without failing a whole lot of times along the way. Were there times that you felt that, no, I can't do this, or how, if you didn't, how did you? Well, obviously you didn't because you're an author now, but how did you kind of power through that knee-jerk reaction?
I still feel that way. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there are days still. I have 3 books out now, and there are days that I get up and go to work and go to work, which means write. And it's just I get in a funk and I think, you know what, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is it. Like, I've wasted my whole 10 years at this point. Oh my gosh, big pity party basically.
Right.
What I've learned from that, because that has happened consistently since I started, 2013 to present, 10 years. It's actually not as much anymore, a lot more in the beginning. But what I learned from that is that just means I need that day off, basically.
Right.
I take a break. I don't worry about it. I take a little time. And then the next day, no problem. I'm fired up and ready to go again,
Yeah. I think that's true of a lot of things. I think that's true. Like, I ran when I was younger and, you get that first run and everything's cramping up and you're like, I'm not doing this, too painful. And then for some reason, because we're humans, and I guess that's why we evolved the way that we did. Because all right, I'm gonna do it again.
Right.
And it's gonna suck and it's gonna hurt, but okay. And I gotta take a break now. Come back and do it again. So I mean, that's an admirable thing in my estimation. That people can, because that's how that's how anything gets done, is you just have to keep failing forward, I guess.
You get it right.
Yeah. I had never heard of the term failing forward before a couple years ago, but it's all good. So how's everything going now that you've gotten past that point, you're writing your stories and everything? How's it going now with like, where do you want to go as far as the stories that you're telling? Because when we first start, your first books are always, you're you have an idea what you want to do, you pull it together, but as you write more, you get kind of more tunnel vision. It's like, I know I need to do this. So are there things that you are now kind of focused on with your stories that you want to push forward with in the next couple years?
That's a great question. And honestly, since I just finished my trilogy, well, I say just, it's been a little bit now. And honestly, I've been working on figuring out what story I want to tell next a lot. I got interrupted by a move that took 3 months from start to finish, which was kind of crazy. But the end result was that I lost all my momentum because I was moving for 3 months, and that was up until a couple weeks ago, which is why there's still bare shelves everywhere, as I haven't finished unpacking yet. But in that time, I have started 8 different stories. They're all good. A lot of promise to them, but I'm still looking for that thing that is just going to grab me. You know what I mean?
Right. So is there in the current, well, the trilogy that you just wrapped up,
Yeah.
was there something that you were thinking about that you could have done in that story that, well, that won't work here, but maybe it'll work somewhere else?
I tend to use ideas when I get them,
Okay.
unless they just don't work. You know what I mean? I'm not a saver.
Mhm.
I'm of the impression that in the future, when I need an idea, I'll be able to come up with one. So I don't really say, that's a great idea. I should save that for some future project. You know what I mean? Let me make a note. No, I use it right away. If it fits and it works, I just use it. So I don't really have a giant backlog of ideas. I tend to have a giant log of potential characters and settings.
Mm.
Um, and then that's kind of been my problem is what are they all going to do? You know what I mean? Like what's the story? Coming up with the plots and that kind of stuff. And honestly, I got sidetracked a little bit because I'm full-time author. This is my only job. And so during this whole move, I was thinking a lot about what I wanted to write next and trying different things. And I think I got myself a little sidetracked with the money aspect,
Mm.
thinking, I could write this because this one is more marketable. You know what I mean? There's a bigger audience. This would do better financially. But then I'm not as passionate about that as I am, other ideas that would be more fulfilling for me.
Yeah,
So,
that's a crazy thing that kind of comes up, is, and I've always struggled with this, especially in our community, but I think it's for anybody who's a creative. It's kind
yeah,
of this line between, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm passionate about, but this is more marketable, and this is what we're told to. I mean, we're told this all the time from all of the gurus. Um,
right,
do this, do this, do this, do this, and you see it obviously in Hollywood. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of original screenplays, but we're going to get the third remake of Terminator. Coming. Let's find everything that existed in the '80s and make a movie out of it. There is that kind of that business side to it. Do you think that this kind of consumerist pursuit of just product, more and more and more, does that take away from some of the creativity? And is there, because I think there's kind of like got to be an inflection point at some point where you're going to have rehashed everything so many times. It's like a photocopy of a copy of a copy. Eventually it's nothing.
right.
So at some point there's got to be an inflection point where originality and creativity is going to have to come back to some of the storytelling. I mean, do you agree with that, or do you think
No, I agree. And I think that, okay, I write weird stuff for anybody that doesn't know out there. And when I say weird, it's not really weird. It just sounds weird,
hmm.
which is why I tend to have a hard time marketing it online and do a lot of shows in person.
Well, give us an
Um,
example. Give us an example
my
of
main
what
character is a
sounds.
were otter.
Yeah.
Like and if you get into the book, it completely makes sense. It's not strange at all. Like, no problem. But how do you sell that to somebody? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, um, like one book I'm working on, one of my stories, it's set in the same world as my trilogy, a little bit in the future, and he's a goblin who gets turned into a vampire. So he's a vampire goblin,
Nice.
right? Or goblin vampire. And it's really cool. But again, how am I going to sell that? People love vampires, but you add that goblin thing to it, and then they're like, what does that look like? You know what I mean? What's
Right.
a goblin vampire?
I think people can get scared sometimes too if you have something original that you're going to get somebody who's going to just troll. I mean, because obviously being creatives, being creators, we definitely have to deal with negative feedback. And it's very interesting. I think in our world, it's kind of unique compared to other, like the gaming world or the movie world, where they'll get a million voices, saying that the latest whatever movie was crap. Is You can kind of wash over that as like background
Right.
noise. But for us, we get like specific from an individual to our individual stories, to us as individuals, that in it you can't help but feel that it's a personal attack.
Right.
How do you kind of deal with that kind of, of course, there's a difference between fair criticism and just being a troll. So how do you kind of deal with the fair criticism, and how do you deal with the trolling?
All right. I have only ever received one negative comment on my work.
Well, that's really good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert in dealing with it, but at the same time, I got the one. And that one was, look, I don't mind criticism. I honestly don't at all. Say whatever you want as long as it has merit. You know what I mean? This guy, I had entered it. This is back when just the first book was out, before I redid it and fixed some issues. And this guy read it, and it was, oh, I'm sorry, I entered it in the self-published fantasy blog off.
Okay.
And so I entered it in that because, whatever, I didn't know any better. And the guy that reviewed my book didn't like my cover. And his review was two full paragraphs talking about how horrible my cover was. The worst cover in existence, There's never been a cover as bad as this one ever. And then this like 3-sentence section of, it's a worthy entry, it's a good book, strong characters, all this kind of stuff. And he gave me a 1-star review. And it's like, okay, hold on a second. Like the cover, that's one thing, but I don't see how he could praise the inside of the book, criticize just the cover, and then give me 1 star. That's not fair. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I wrote him out. He ended up changing it to a 2-star.
Oh, wow.
That's twice as much as it was, But, as far as how I respond to that, I actually still, I don't have a card beside me, but I took one of his quotes from the 3,
right.
one of the 3 sentences of nice stuff he said, and I used that as promotional material. So, nice. That's, people are going to say what they're going to say. The thing is, if there's a separation with people, if you're not looking somebody in the eye there with them in person, humans tend to treat those people that they don't really exist. You know what I mean? Like they're automatons, whatever it's called.
Yep.
Just, some random thing out there that doesn't have feelings, and it doesn't matter what they say about them. And, so that's where all that stuff comes from. The things that those people say in your review, they would never say to your face.
Right.
So I don't get too hung up about it. It's going to happen. Like I said, I don't care if people bash my book as long as it's fair. Give me the reasons why you didn't like it. And that's fine. If they pay for it, they can say whatever they want to about it.
Exactly.
That's cool. That's even trade.
Right. Yeah. So you have to keep in mind that again, criticism is another part of getting better, because sometimes it's valid criticism. It can be at times, and you can go, yeah, I can see where, I agree too that that's a issue there or whatever. But the trolls that's a totally different story. I don't know if you've seen, they've had a study recently, because I'm big into psychology, and they had a study of the kind of people that heavily engage in negative activity on social media, like trolling and dragging people, doxing people, stuff like that, or just people who are just on all the time just to put up something negative. And I do feel, having seen so many reviews for so many different things, especially in our community, and looking up at other people's pages and seeing what the reviews said about what they did, there is this element that seems to just be obsessed with it. And they kind of did the study that says there's it's kind of this link to, it's kind of a psychopathy to some extent. Mm-hmm. And there's a bit of narcissism in there, and there's a lot, like 4 negative traits that are tied up consistently with the behavioral patterns of people like that. So I kind of try to keep that in mind if I ever do get negative reviews that are like wildly crazy. Like I had one of my earlier books, I was a different pen name. It was a horror book. It was a short story, and the person's complaint was that it's too short. And and then kept going on about a bunch of stuff, and she didn't like that this person survived. It had nothing to do with whether or not the story was good, is that they just picked things that they didn't like, as far as like the way a character's ethnicity was, or if this person said this or whatever. So it's like, you have to keep in mind some of these people might not be mentally well. So I kind of deal with it that way.
I was talking to a friend of mine, George Weinstein. He's kind of a big deal down here in Georgia. Runs the Atlanta Writers Club. But anyway, I was talking to him, and he was telling me about a negative review he got, and it was kind of like that. They didn't really review the book; they just kind of trashed it. And when he got done, I said, I look forward to being enough of a big shot to have a bunch of negative reviews.
Right.
Like, you can look at it positively. People are out there reviewing your book. That's a great thing.
Yep.
And a certain percentage of those are going to be bad, because I have a very hard time getting reviews. I don't know what it is, but people just don't get out there and review it much. So, yeah, if any of you are out there and not reviewing my book because it's going to be negative, just go do it. Okay, I'm good with it.
Just get the book now for your hashtag rate Ben's books. There we go. Get that hashtag going. Yeah, that's it. I've gotten quite a few. I've written, what am I on now? 8, 6 novels, 2 anthologies, and 2 short stories. Actually, that's 10 now, total. But yeah, you get some bad stuff, and it's part of the growing process. Do you have any? Because as I was mentioning, I have a couple stories. Do you have? You said you have some things in the hopper that you want to eventually kind of get to. What would actually be the thing that would spark you to say, "Ooh, all right, this character, I've molded this idea enough to now I can go with it." Like this character or this story or the combination of them, now it's ready to go. Like what sparks that in you?
Just a really well developed character. Like I said, I get hung up with the plotting sometimes, but that's because I'm a discovery writer and I don't plot in general. I come up with a general idea of what I want to happen, just like key points. These 5 things have to happen to tell the story I want to tell, and then I have no idea how that character is going to get there. So once a character reaches a certain point in his development or her development, then I start writing with it. And that's part of my problem, I think, is that I just have so many, fleshed out characters that I want to write them all, but I kind of have to stick to one at a time if I'm ever going to finish anyway. So deciding what that next thing is going to be, who I'm going to spend that much time with next, has been problematic.
Right.
I have 2 books that are a third of the way done. And then, like I said, I think I said 7 or 8 stories that had started and worked on that are all, different lengths, but 2 of them are a third of the way through. So I need to pick those and just finish them and put them out,
Yeah. So I guess that spark just got, I guess, kind of like, what do you call it? Pantsing or whatever the word is. As it comes along, I guess the eureka moment will come when the eureka moment comes, and not a moment before and not a moment after. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't know if I could, no, because the stuff I've had in my head has been pretty solid for like 20 years. So it's just now the process of getting it actually created now, which is always fun. So you said as you were mentioning that you guys had just moved and it took 3 months. Yeah. So were you moving to a different country, or
sometimes I wish, but no.
Were you using the Tortoise moving company? What happened with this?
We actually we're still in the same county we were in. We moved from the north side of the county to the south side of the county, which is just, it's 25 minutes closer to where we need to be all the time. And it's a much larger, nicer house. I didn't have an office in the old house. I worked off of the couch. which was fine, except there's a lot of distractions on the couch. So, and it started in November. Beginning in November, we decided we were going to move. We had an opportunity, got a good deal on the place, kind of thing. So we packed up. And I packed up all my office stuff. I had, just the bare essentials done. So most of November was packing and that kind of stuff. And then December came along and we were expecting to get moved in December at some point.
Right.
And that just didn't happen. So we spent most of December like waiting, with all of our stuff backed up. And then we got to start moving in January, but with some help from some friends on a couple days, I did the rest of it myself,
Mm.
With the van and my trailer, loading everything up, unloading everything. And it was just a beast. I don't know if you've ever had any experience with a knitter, but my wife is a knitter, and knitters are pretty much hoarders. Okay.
Oh no.
Knitters, you can go into any knitter's house in the country, I will put money on, and there will basically be, 8 metric tons of yarn in any given room and if you move, hey, that's great. Have it, it's stacked, it's over there, it's out of the way. But when you move, you got to take all that stuff with you. So much yarn. I've never seen so much yarn in my life. But yeah, no, it wasn't all yarn. I'm not saying that. She's going to watch this and get mad at me. But,
Right.
there was just a lot of stuff to move. So it took me about 3 weeks of moving in January from the official start date to when I officially got everything out of the other house and into this house, and then I'm starting getting stuff put away. But, life is slowly returning to normal and kind of trying to get back in the groove of things. So, but it's been rough.
Yeah. It's a unexpected vacation of sorts that I don't know if you're going to look at it as a vacation or not.
No, definitely not a vacation. I don't really need, like, as a full-time writer, I don't really find myself needing vacations or wanting vacations even. I mean, like I said, sometimes it gets to me and I need a singular day off,
Right.
and that's enough. This is not that stressful it's not like corporate America stress. Let me put it that way. It's stressful in different ways, but I worked in corporate America for 20 years before I quit and did this.
Yep.
So, it's not the same thing.
Because you're in a different spot, because when you're working for somebody else, it's different. But the person you're working for is going through what you're going through now, which is I'm just doing the thing, and then that's separate. But I love to do this, and I would do it all the time. Seems to be a trait too that they say that there are particular people who will do that, and who will work all the time, nonstop, take a break, and then devote all of their energies into perfecting this particular thing. And that seems to be again, it's another, however you measure success, because it's not just monetary, it's personal success, or whatever your goal is, achieving your goal essentially. Right. Even if it's just to get your book on a shelf somewhere, or it's just to have one person buy it, you're going to have to work at it to get to that point. And I think that when I see people with that determination, and I see people without that determination, I grew up with that mindset all the time. And I thought until I was in my 30s, oh, everybody does this. Everybody will just keep doing it. And then later in life, it's like, no, just everybody doesn't. It's like, and then, there's a question of how fair is that to them, that, they're kind of limited because they just don't have that gear or that gene, that some may call it insanity, to work, all the time on stuff. So it's kind of a conundrum. I never know when someone who doesn't have that drive comes to me and is upset about something, or says that they're upset that they haven't gotten to a certain point or gotten to a certain place. You can't really just say, well, you need to work harder, because that's like the worst thing you can possibly say to anybody in that situation.
It's funny you use insanity to describe it. You reminded me, one of my new favorite quotes I ran into not too long ago, but it summed up my writing life pretty much perfectly. And I've not said this before to anyone. So here we go.
There you go.
It's Joseph Conrad in Heart of Darkness. And he says, "It was written, I must be true to the nightmare of my choice." And it's like, yeah, I heard that line and it's like, I chose to do this. And
Right.
sometimes it's a nightmare, but you just got to do it,
Yeah.
So yeah, that really struck a nerve with me.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like pick your poison.
Yeah.
But you know what you sign on for, and that's kind of the deal with it. So the stressful times may be stressful. I think they're stressful in the moment, but there are always those things. I remember back on 3 years ago, first learning how to do indie publishing, and the excitement of, even as hard as it was when it was finished, it's like, and now I can do more. Let's go to the next one. So that I think that's what comes out of it's, again, it's like, it's funny. It's in everything. It's, if you want to get in shape, if you want to learn anything new, you got to go through those processes of uncomfortable moments to do so. Hopefully not 3 months of moving, but
Yeah, as far as the writing goes, I've noticed, I was just thinking about this, the stress compared to the corporate environment. When I started out, it was more intense in certain ways, but it goes away. Like once I deal with a situation once, I know how to deal with it,
right.
and then it's not a big deal anymore. Whereas in the corporate world, even though I was doing the same thing I did every day, it was never ending. You know what I mean?
Right.
I go in there for 8 hours a day, have this do the same thing every day, and it never ends. And that was like, that just builds. You know what I mean? It's almost ominous. But with writing, you have new experiences and those can be stressful, but once you tackle them, you can handle them and that's no big deal. It's a whole different mindset for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was stressful to begin with, but now, it's no big deal. I mean, stuff like this, your first interview that you do, you're all nervous, like,
Right.
oh my God, I'm going to say something stupid or whatever. But, and I haven't done many of them, but still, like I've done it, I get it. It's no big deal. We're just hanging out and talking.
Yeah. Although I will say I wasn't nervous for the first interview that I did, because
Yeah.
I knew exactly what I was going to say, and I was not going to be deterred from saying something else, and it kept steering it back. And I guess that's why I decided to do an author podcast, to kind of draw more stories and more human stories out of the people that are writing these interesting stories. Because if our stories are interesting, then we've experienced some stuff that is interesting, that goes into why those stories are the way that they are. So what do you got coming up in the near future? I know you're planning, you're going to get the house together, and then is there, as far as where you want to be about 12 months from now at the end of 2023, what do you got?
Into 2023, I would like to have 2, maybe 3 books out. Now, I've never gone faster than a book a year up to this point. There's no reason why I can't do it, so that's kind of my goal. My goal is 2 books, but I have another shorter book that I wrote in a week, like just the first draft of. And I would like to get that and 2 other full novels done in 2023. That's kind of my goal, you know. Other than that, it's just waiting to see if we're going to recover from COVID this year.
Right.
Like I said, I did a lot of in-person events, and COVID totally screwed my business over, big time. So it's been a rough couple of years in the business life, but it's getting a little better, but it's not back. And so I'm hoping this year it will be back, because that would be seriously helpful for me.
Yeah, that is the kind of the unfortunate risk about things, because I always think there are like these watershed moments. Like 9/11 was one where there were things that happened before 9/11 that, because of 9/11, we couldn't do for like the interim, and then they just never came back. And I think
Right.
COVID is one of those too, where we're all kind of going, all right, before COVID, these things happen, and let's try to get back to it and hope that it's not one of those things that it's like, yeah, we're not going to do it anymore. I mean, for me, mine locally is that we don't have 24-hour diners around my area anymore. It's
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, they just never opened up again. They just, we're going to close at 10 and that's it. So that's the way.
You need a good Waffle House.
I know that I wish there was one around here,
Yeah.
but so tell the people where they can find you on the socials and all those good places, websites.
I am everywhere as author Ben Meeks, website, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon. I'm just getting that set up, so don't expect much yet. Yeah, everywhere as author Ben Meeks. You can find the books online at Amazon, mainly just Amazon right now because I'm getting my extended distribution fixed. So I'm not really wide at the moment.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, thanks for talking to us, Ben, and we will catch up with you again soon.
All right. Thanks, buddy.